Hey there, welcome to the channel. Today we are going to be combining two of my favorite things, art and science. I know that might sound a little bit boring to some of you, but it's really fun and really cool, so just stick with me. So I'm sure that many of you have seen the sun printing kits that you can get. It's usually a blue piece of paper and you can put it out in the sun and lay things on top of it, and then you get these really cool blue prints. You just have to run it underwater. I found out the other day that you can do the same thing and make it yourself using turmeric. I knew that turmeric was a very staining spice, and that if you did get turmeric on things, you could put it out in the sun and it would fade it, etc., etc. I just never thought about using it to actually create prints. So apparently if you take turmeric and you put it into some rubbing alcohol, the alcohol will extract the pigment or all of the chemical compounds from the turmeric that give it its color, and then you can use that to paint on your surface, and then that becomes light reactive, and then you just lay something over top of it to block the light, put it out in the sun fades whatever it can see and leaves everything else just the color that it was, or sometimes it turns a slightly different color, and then you rinse it with baking soda and water, and that stops whatever process was happening, so it becomes not light reactive anymore. So we're gonna just go ahead and get right into that and see what we can do. Okay, if you've ever worked with turmeric before, put it in any dishes or whatever, you know that it stains very well. So I've got some gloves on here because I do not want to stain my hands for a long time. So what I read is you want to try and put basically one nice coat on. If you put more on, it is going to change the color that it dyes things. So I'm trying to get one really nice coat and not go back and get a bunch more because I kind of liked the color that I saw with just the one coat. So you just kind of coat it, and then we gotta let that dry. I'm gonna grab the box. I'll do that next because I really do want to try this out. I am really curious to see what happens with this box, to see if it stains it. I think it might be kind of cool to have like a kind of a floral motif on here that was done using the turmeric dye. Now, one thing I am noticing is that this does go quite a ways, so I still have a lot of solution left, so that's going to be nice. I can just pop this like under the sink for now, keep it in the dark because right now the compounds are active in there, so if it is exposed to light, it will start to react. All right, my card looks like it is ready to go, so I just gathered, bugs. Apparently I gathered bugs. I gathered a number of materials that I thought I would just try placing on here and just see what I can get, what it's going to look like, that sort of thing. And all of this stuff is going to get pressed down with the glass, so I don't have to worry about necessarily getting it sitting nice and flat at the moment. And then I think I had, hello, that there, and this kind of like up here somehow. There's a rubber band there, that's still wet. These things are dry. I don't know how well something like that's gonna get squished. I'm gonna have to cut that off. Okay, I've got this sitting in direct sunlight. I just popped it on one of my shrubs here, and then I got my box down here on my front porch, and I'm just gonna let it sit there and process. So wish me luck. Alrighty, the sun is starting to fade. It's only been about like 15-20 minutes, but you can see that the linen up here is definitely a lot lighter. That means that the sun has already kind of started to bleach out the turmeric there. I'm gonna move that down a little bit. And then here we can see that it's still pretty yellow here, and pretty yellow across there. So those are going to take a little bit longer. And if we come down here to my box, this is still quite yellow, so it hasn't acted too much on it. But like I said, it's only been about 15 minutes or so, maybe 20 minutes at tops. So still got a ways to go, and I still got a ways before the sun goes down. So hopefully there's still enough time for it to do its thing. So we've moved all the stuff outside. It's been out there for a good hour or so, and I've got another hour or so before the sun actually goes down. And some of the stuff has definitely, I can see that there's fading that has happened. And some of the materials, the turmeric hasn't faded very much at all. So it's really interesting to kind of see how the different materials are working. One of the problems that I think I'm having is the sun isn't directly above. This is kind of later in the evening, so it's going down a little bit. So I'm wondering if the sun just isn't quite strong enough to really do the thing. I am seeing that the linen is definitely processing much faster than the papers, which I thought was really interesting, and processing faster than the wooden box, which, like I said, I thought was interesting. I didn't expect things to process at such different speeds. I kind of figured that they were all going to fade at around the same time, but apparently that is not the case. Oh, so the linen one is done. You can see the color here. I've got my sink filled with water and baking soda, and then we just kind of submerge it in here. Oops, let's let you actually see what's happening. And kind of swish it around. You want to get, from what I have seen and read, you want to kind of make sure that everything gets soaked really nicely, because you want to make sure that whatever process was happening is kind of neutralized. And then we will set it out to dry. And we'll see what color everything turns, because I have seen that it doesn't necessarily stay this really bright kind of sun gold. Sometimes it'll turn a little bit more red or a little bit more orange or whatever as it dries. So we'll see what happens. Okay, everything is done now, and it's been like a day or so since it finished up. I did end up having to put the stuff out and then bring it back in and then put it back out in the sun a second time, because I had put it out later in the evening, and so I don't think it got enough sun or enough full sun in order for it to really react well. But it didn't seem to make a big difference that I put it out a second time. It may have made a difference in color, but in terms of effectiveness, it was perfectly fine. I did try shining just some grow lights on it while it was in the house, and that didn't do anything. Just kind of overhead lights didn't really seem to do anything. The sun was the trick. So we're gonna start off, and we are gonna look at the results from the watercolor cards. First off, we've got these Strathmore watercolor cards. These are 140 pound cold pressed watercolor. It does not appear to be 100% cotton because it doesn't say that on here. So this is the card itself, and we got this kind of nice reddish brown color. Some things didn't, like, I feel like I had a little bit more here, but it's not really showing up. But we did get some nice prints there, and you can see that where the turmeric was and there wasn't anything over it, it kind of turned this brown color. And the envelope also worked pretty well, and I made sure to keep the sticky part out of the water. But yeah, this is how that turned out, and it's a very similar color. It did obviously warp the paper a fair amount, but that's to be expected because this is not watercolor paper or anything like that, and it has to get dunked in water. But we also got that kind of same reddish color here. Item number 2 is this really terrible watercolor paper. I've tried using this for watercolor and it's absolutely terrible for it. So I figured I might as well try doing sun printing on there and see how it turns out, to see if it's good for anything other than maybe just some scrap paper for whatever. Here is the result from that. It is very streaky, which I thought was really interesting. I'm not quite sure why it turned out quite so streaky. I know that it didn't want to absorb the solution very much when I was putting it on, so that's probably part of it. But we got some really cool colors here. You can see like the color difference between this and this. we got more of a reddy orange on here, and a slightly different kind of background color. I do like this up here. This was from milkweed. There's a milkweed flower, and I popped that on there. All of the botanicals, there was some stuff here that didn't really show up very much, but all of the botanicals that I put on there were fresh off from things around my yard. I didn't dry them out, I didn't press them, I just kind of stuck them on there and let them go. So the colors may be a little bit different than what you would see if you did the same thing, if you were using something that was dried. I'm guessing that maybe the moisture would have an impact on the colors and textures of things, because you can see up here there are a number of different colors, and then there's kind of these weird, like, I don't know, like splotchiness in there in a couple of spots, but I do kind of like it. I think it's kind of cool. And then lastly, I just got this linen canvas paper. It's not paper, but it's cut into sheets like paper, and you can see here that it is canvas. You can see the canvas material texture back here, and it is a canvas, and it has been primed with some acid-free titanium primer, and I'm going to be doing it on the prime side and just kind of see what happens. This one is very different from all of the rest. It developed much more quickly than everything else. When I was putting the solution on, it went on really nicely. I don't think it soaked in terribly well, but it went on nice and smooth, and everything stayed this kind of bright golden color after it was processed, which I think is really kind of cool. And I got really good like images of everything. Everything turned out really nice, and it makes sense, and like, yeah, as opposed to like this where the images were maybe not quite as good. They're pretty good here, and I just thought it was really neat how much different like the colors turned out with the different materials. Anyway, last but not least is the wooden box. It turned out okay. I do think that it is still reacting to light though, because when this first finished, I feel like this part in the middle here was closer to this color, and now it's kind of turning more kind of yellowy. It is kind of cool the way it looks. This was a fern across here, and this was the flower from a hosta. But it's kind of neat. The nice thing is, if I don't like this, I can always stain over top or paint it or whatever. And I've had this box laying around for years, so wasn't terribly worried about ruining it. But yeah, that's how that turned out. Overall, I think it was just kind of a fun little experiment, and I do have a little bit of solution left over that I could try other things with, and perhaps I will just try that on my own, just kind of to play with it and see what I can do. I might try out some different watercolor paper to see if that turns out any differently. I don't think I want to use any of my Arches watercolor paper because that's pretty expensive for an experiment like this, but all of this stuff, I figured, you know, it was fun and it was just kind of neat to experiment and something a little bit different. If you want to try this at home, it's super easy. I didn't measure anything out like very accurately, but it was like a tablespoon or so of turmeric, a quarter cup or so of rubbing alcohol, and I used 70% rubbing alcohol because you don't need to use like the really good stuff for it. And I just put a coffee filter and then turmeric and then rubbing alcohol and just kind of let it drip through that way. You could mix it all together in the jar and then strain it out later, or if you don't mind little kind of splotches of turmeric on your materials, you don't have to strain it at all. I didn't want the splotches, so I just let it strain through at the very beginning because I didn't feel like doing multiple steps. And it was pretty straightforward. And then you paint it on your surface. You put your materials over top. I put a piece of glass over top of that, but mainly just to kind of keep the botanicals from blowing away in any kind of breeze or wind. And then you set it out in the sun. Like I said, it did seem to want kind of more full sun in order to really develop. Late afternoon sun was just not quite strong enough. anyway, that was that. And this is what we ended up with. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you again next week. Bye.